for that at about 6:30. So our next member is the newest member of the Minnesota delegation from Congressional District 6. We're very pleased to have Representative Tom Emmer, who's been really interested in infrastructure and transportation, and we're really pleased to have him here today. So let's welcome Representative Emmer.
So can everybody hear me? If I stay, the mic kind of, it's intimidating to me. I spent my life on hockey rinks coaching, and I was told my voice projected just fine. So if it doesn't, tell me. First, thank you for being here. It's always interesting to me when I get introduced as the newest member instead of the youngest member. But I know that my youthful, my boyish youth gives me away. I came here, I like to joke, 16 months ago, and my hair was dark and I was about 20 pounds lighter, and look what happens to you in just 15 months in Congress. It's been an interesting 15 months, but I got to get you all to smile a little bit, so I want to tell you a story that just came out. I was reading Bloomberg before I came down, and apparently Dan Snyder, who owns the Washington Redskins, has announced that he will finally be changing the name this fall because he can't handle it anymore. The pressure from now on, starting this fall, the Washington Redskins will simply be known as the Redskins because the term Washington is too offensive for anybody to have it in the team's name. Quickly, I think a lot of you, we talked about this last year, you knew that I came in, first off, the fact that you would spend your time, your money. I talked to some of you yesterday and said this. So important that you come out and do this. I mean, when I was in the Minnesota legislature, you know, it was different. People come into your office all the time. They're your neighbors. They're from the state. That's important too. But for me, the fact that people would actually invest the time, the money, and the energy to come all the way to Washington, D.C. as a group like this and hoof it around all these different offices where sometimes you're received with bells and whistles, other times it probably feels like you're just the next appointment that they got to get off the calendar. It's really important that you do this because I think it leaves a bigger impression than you even know, the fact that you would take the time to be here. And transportation, obviously, this is one that I think everybody is wrestling with. I learned not only is this a Minnesota problem, but when I came to Congress, I learned this is a nationwide problem. So I'll get on with it quick because the star of the show just walked in. You know, Keith Ellison, he represents that Minneapolis area of Minnesota, so we got to defer. You know, that's where all the important people live. So I'll make sure that we don't take too much time. No, this is another example I want to touch on real quick because I came into this from a political standpoint. You know, I got elected to the Minnesota legislature out of one of the most conservative districts in the state of Minnesota. I was called, and I don't even know what it means anymore, one of the most conservative members of the Minnesota House of Representatives. Those of you that categorize people that way, please maybe take a step back. Stop doing that, because people who say they're conservative, I don't think they even know what that means, right? People who say they're liberal, I don't think they even know what that means. There's this continuum that we've created to try and categorize people, and you find out, if you get to know them, that they may not fit whatever that picture was. We're supposed to be here doing a job for the state of Minnesota and for our country. We are representatives. We're supposed to be representing the people that we work for, and the people that we work for are the people in this room and the people that are at home. This is not our way, and forgive the pun, or the highway. This is about how do we get this thing done. We all want the same things. We just have different perspectives and different ideas of how to get there. With that in mind, Keith Ellison is a guy that, you know, we see the world on certain issues, that way that we get there may be completely different. But we still know that the goal is the same. We want to achieve the same thing. So as I get sworn into Congress, the most amazing thing to me was the Minnesota delegation. You know, you have three really important members from the Republican side of the aisle. And then you have all these other people that have to fight for space and attention on the Democrat side of the aisle. No, once you get here, I think it's pretty safe to say, Keith, that it's got nothing to do with wearing a Republican or a Democrat jersey. Again, we have different perspectives about how we get from here to there. But at the end of the day, we want the same things, and it's been incredibly refreshing to me to come in as the only new member of the delegation and actually find the other 9 members so willing to actually invite you in and show you where the rooms are, if nothing else, show you how to get from Canada, Rayburn, and everywhere in between. And I think that bodes well. It speaks well for Minnesota, which I think people would expect, but I would like to say it because at home, this is what you read about. They don't ever want to report that we actually can work together and we can do things together and that we don't have like personal animosities. No, they want to report whenever we have a difference of opinion, as if you know, we don't like each other. And you know, very sad for Keith. It's probably going to hurt his reputation and affect his 70% voting base in Minneapolis. But 72. But we get along. We get along well. All right. That part aside, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I'll wrap it up with this. I think we made some progress at the end of last year. I have different ideas of how we're supposed to get there, different from some of you in this room, different from Keith, I'm sure. I think the future, when it comes to transportation, is making sure that we return or restore more authority to the states. This thing was set up as a republic. It wasn't set up as a parliamentary democracy. It's not supposed to be a one-size-fits-all for everything in this country, including transportation. And I think that the future is going to require a renaissance of something called federalism. It's going to require that Minnesota be allowed to keep more of its resources at home. Instead of having us send $1 to, oh, now here comes the other, you know, the more statesman, Eric Paulson. So I'll wrap it up. In order for us to succeed, I don't think we should be sending $1 to Washington, D.C. and seeing back roughly 70 to 75 cents. I think more of that money should stay at home. Yes, there will always be a place for the federal government when it comes to transportation because it is a national issue. There's no question. But when we are a net giver as opposed to getting more value for that $1 that we're sending to Washington, D.C., I don't think that's right. And I think the future is going to require that we start looking at how we can continue. And I think this bill that we passed at the end of December, that these guys will tell you more, I think it started along that road, if you will. I think it started to give states back some authority in how they make these decisions, how they allocate these resources, but it's just the beginning. Now, if Minnesota could just get something done at the state level, maybe the two of them together could help us all do the things that we're trying to do. So thank you again for coming to Minnesota. I feel a little bit like the band nobody's ever heard of, because now I'm going to turn it over to the big acts and they can play the big songs. Thanks. I'm going to see some of you later today, right? Yes. All right. So our office is open.
Well, thank you very much. And we are pleased to have with us Representative Keith Ellison from Minneapolis. And he's been a great supporter of transportation and projects like the Central Corridor. And we're very happy to have him back at our Fly-In again this year. So thank you so much for being here.
All right, Mark.
Hey, good to see everybody. And no, let me tell you, Tom Emmer has been great. I mean, he and I were friends back in the state legislature, and it's a pleasure to work with him now. I see Eric right there, and we really do try to work together. Everyone knows we have different views and takes on things, but getting people from one place to another is we all agree on that, you know, and that's essential. And we also agree, I think, that you know roads don't build themselves, right? And neither do bridges, and neither does transit. You know, let me just make a few points. You're going to get a whole, I saw a list of like 5 people who are going to talk to you about the nuts and bolts of the FAST Act, right? I was proud to vote for it. I thought it was a good bill. It was a bipartisan effort, and so that's great. But I think that there's way more that we need to do. So if you believe the American Society of Civil Engineers, they say we need about $3.3 trillion investment in the next decade to bring our country's transportation system into good repair. Now that's a major investment. It's also a major driver. It's also going to definitely improve our productivity as a nation. And so I am in favor of making that investment, because I'm in favor of increasing productivity, increasing employment, and making sure that we take care of public safety. Remember, inadequate transportation funding doesn't just mean congested highways. It also means dead people. And I don't want to be all dramatic, but I'll never forget when 35 went into the Mississippi. To me, that is something we all need to bear in mind. That is part of this debate. Now, in my view, we do need more resources, and we also need some new perspective. It's too bad that in the Minnesota State Legislature, we're over here fighting over roads versus transit. Well, we need both, right? In my opinion, we need both. I mean, this is a perfect example, this city we're in right now, about how important transit is. I mean, this town, what would happen if we didn't have the metro? It would be a worse nightmare mess than it is now. And let me tell you, just driving from here to downtown is not easy. You'll see. And but you driving around the city of Minneapolis is a snap compared to here. But we are growing, and we are going to be in that congested nightmare if we don't invest in transit. Now I'm going to tell you, the Green Line has been great in Minneapolis. Do y'all agree that the Green Line has been a good thing? And the Hiawatha Line has been good. Now the North Star Line, people say, well, that hasn't been as strong. But I'm telling you, when we build the whole system out, I believe that it will be. I'm very concerned about the Southwest Light Rail line. I am a very strong proponent of it, not because I think that, not only because it's going to help get people who earn only a little bit of money or no money to some high-end, some better-paying jobs. Not only because just the construction of it is going to put a lot of lot of companies to work and put a lot of good jobs and construction jobs in play, but also because it's also going to help our climate. I think we need to understand that if me as a metro urban legislator, I'm willing to vote for roads in rural Minnesota, and I absolutely am, then I just want to have other folks see that, well, we maybe need to support some transit. We need to think of ourselves as one state, from Detroit Lakes to Minneapolis to St. Paul, and everywhere in between. So I support transit projects, and I will tend to. I think we do need to raise the gas tax. I think we need to do it, and I think when people say, oh, we don't want more taxes, I'm like, well, look at it this way. You're driving on the road, it gets worn and torn down. So all you're doing is paying for what